Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm sitting at the Nasir Harris Podcast Studio of Boyer House at the Summerdale campus of Central Penn College. On today's episode, we're going to talk with Career Services Director Steve Hassinger about the upcoming CPEC Job Fair on Tuesday, February the 19th, from 10 to 3. So, Steve, this is certainly not your first time on the podcast. We'd like to welcome you back.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
I hope it wasn't last CPEC that we had you on. You've been on since then, haven't you?
I've been on at least once since then.
Okay.
Yes.
Because we got to make sure that we're getting you down here frequently, Steve. So if it's ever been a while that I don't ask you to come on, you need to give me a hard time because we got to know what you're doing in the Career Services Office and to help our students. Also being joined today by a familiar voice, Nightly News President Brian Christiana. Brian, welcome back to the Nightly News.
Thank you, sir. It's good to be back in my normal spot from last time.
You're welcome. What we're going to talk about with Brian today is Brian's actually been at a variety of different job fairs in the past. So I want to bring a student perspective on somebody who's in their sophomore, junior year, and how going to a career services event, whether that be a job fair or networking event, how that can benefit you going forward. So we'll chat with you about that here momentarily.
Sounds good, sir. Thank you.
Steve, to CPEC. So the CPEC Job Fair will take place on Tuesday, February 19th from 10 to 3 at the Radisson Hotel Harrisburg in Camp Hill. The most common question I've gotten so far is, why do they say it's the Radisson Hotel Harrisburg and it's in Camp Hill?
Well, the best answer I can give you is I think it's probably the same reason that the Harrisburg International Airport is located in Middletown. It's a suburb of Harrisburg, so I think for marketing purposes they refer to it as the Harrisburg location, but it is definitely in Camp Hill.
And it's really not more than about 10 minutes from campus, so you're not necessarily going to downtown Harrisburg, but very, very close to campus. Now, tell us a little bit more about CPEC. So this is the one job fair that you are affiliated with in the Career Services Office that is off campus. So can you tell us a little bit more about CPEC and what and how our students can participate in this event?
Absolutely. CPEC stands for Central Pennsylvania Employment Consortium, and it's a consortium of 16 colleges and universities throughout the Central Pennsylvania area, as well as some employer members who sit on our advisory council. And it's great to have employers participate in those meetings because it's one thing for us as career counselors to say, well, this is how we should run the job fair, and this is what the employers need. But it's great to have the employers actually be there with us and say, well, it seems like that's what we need, but this is really what we need. So sometimes they give us a good perspective. So all of these organizations go together and they create one big job and internship fair that is open to all of our students, all of our alumni. The benefit of doing that as a consortium is that you may have companies and organizations that wouldn't necessarily come out to 16 different schools to job fairs and to recruit. And they can go to one location on one day and they can be recruiting students and alumni from all those different areas. The other thing is, on our campus, in our conference center, we have a wonderful facility, but there's no way that I could put 80 to 100 companies in there. I think the most that we've ever had for a job fair was 56 companies. So it gives us the opportunity to have a bigger venue, participating with all these other schools and having a wider array of employers that are going to be there.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because, even though, as you mentioned, we do have a great space, there's no way, not only that you could fit all of those people, but there's also, it'd probably be difficult to get that many employers to come. And so I think that that's very unique. So anybody that's interested in going, again, Tuesday, February 19th, can you just explain to us what the registration process is? Is there a registration process that goes along with CPEC?
Registration is not absolutely necessary, but I'm encouraging all of our students and alumni who want to attend to register simply by contacting us in Career Services. And an easy way to do that is simply send an email to careerservices@centralpenn.edu. Just say, hey, I'd like to go to the CPEC Job Fair. For those people who register, we'll be sending out some reminder emails. We'll send out some tips, some information, some updates as we get closer to the event. But if you haven't registered and all of a sudden February 19th rolls around and it's 9 o'clock in the morning and you say, wow, I should have registered for the job fair today, I'd really like to go, certainly you're welcome to show up without registering.
And we'll come back to maybe what some of those tips are in a second. But I do want to go to Brian here. One of the things that reasons that I wanted to have you on this particular podcast, Brian, is that you're still, about a junior in terms of credits, but you've already been to like 3 different job fairs. I've actually in the past made like my students in my freshman seminar classes and some of the other classes that I have go to these, and I always get the same question. Well, I'm 2 years away from graduating or 3 years away from graduating. Why would I want to go to a job fair? Can you just share some of your experiences and some of the things that you've learned at going to the job fairs that may have benefited you to this point?
Well, going as a freshman and a sophomore, you get your feet wet in these different situations like CPEC, and then the Central Penn College has one. So it's a good thing to get your feet wet, get used to the different environment, looking at different companies, seeing different people. I mean, making connections is a big thing, and because they always say you need to know people, so that's a good first start.
Well, and I think, too, and maybe, Steve, you can talk about this as well, part of the job search happens online today. Let's not fool ourselves. We understand the importance of having an excellent resume and LinkedIn profile, but also a big part of hiring decisions are made based on face-to-face interactions. Can you talk about why that still is, even with the increase in searching and finding and landing jobs online?
Yeah. Well, one of the frustrations that I hear from students and alumni sometimes is, I've sent my resume, I've uploaded it to all these websites, and I haven't heard anything. I wonder if they're even getting it. I wonder if they're even seeing it. When you go to a job fair, you're going to meet those people face to face. So you know that you have that opportunity to get at least a few minutes in front of them. And really, I always tell people, consider it to be a mini interview. And you will find particularly larger organizations that are still going to ask you to go to their website to upload a resume or to fill out an application or whatever the case may be. However, recruiters will tell me that when they go and they look at those hundreds or thousands of resumes, they remember the people that interacted with them at a job fair and that really made an impression. The other thing that I know you and I have talked about sometimes is, you go, you meet somebody at a job fair, you engage them in conversation, and then maybe you follow up with a LinkedIn invitation to connect. And you tell them, I enjoyed meeting you at the job fair. You can follow their company on LinkedIn, and you can make that connection and get periodic updates from them as well.
Brian, have you ever done that with your LinkedIn profile, following up with some of the people that you've met at the job fair?
Yeah, there was a man from the Hershey Entertainment. He was a part of the marketing department. He asked us if we could follow up with him on LinkedIn, and it was myself, Micah Demola, and Ian. The 3 of us connected with him.
Well, one of the things I think that's extremely interesting about that is you were very active on LinkedIn. So you met the gentleman face to face. So he remembers you. Now he connects with you. Now in his news feed, every time you're on a podcast or you're calling a game or writing a story, he's seeing that. Yeah. And so when it comes time for you to actually get out there and apply for that job, he sees your name. He's going to be like, I'm connected to Brian. He's doing some great things. Let's bring him in for an interview. And that one meeting, that 5 minutes that you spent with this gentleman might be the difference in how you get a job. And I mean, to be honest, we're still in a day and age where it is about who you know. Yeah. And if you don't necessarily have a family business or a job that you're walking into out of college, these connections that you make are the most essential connections that you can make outside of with Steve or your professors in your department. And I think that that's where a lot of students don't get. And frankly, Steve, when I was in college, I didn't get that. Right. And that's one thing. Adrian was on a recent podcast, and we were previewing CPEC a little bit as part of the February events, and we both admitted that we knew there were job fairs, but we didn't go because we didn't have anybody pushing us to go. We never had anybody to answer the question, well, why do I want to go to a job fair as a freshman?
Yeah, and honestly, particularly as a freshman or a sophomore, it can be a little intimidating to go to a job fair, particularly a job fair like CPEC, where you may have, 300 or 400 students from different schools and, 80 to 100 companies that are going to be there. But, I'd like students to know that Career Services is there to provide support. So if you go to the job fair and you're not particularly comfortable maybe just walking up to a table and introducing you to somebody, we are happy to make that introduction for you to kind of get that conversation started and then kind of fade out of the way. I know that you're going to be there that day as well.
I will. I'll be there
Professor
the
Miller.
entire time, and if anybody wants to come up and see me, I'd be happy to help you in any way I can, but your whole team will be there as well.
That's right. And we are also, in Career Services, happy to work with you before the job fair. If you want to work on preparing what we call your elevator speech, which is basically your quick 60-second commercial to introduce yourself to an employer. We have some tools to help you with that. We'd be happy to help you work on that elevator speech before you arrive at the job fair as well.
Now, Brian, we've been talking about the advantages of going, while you're earlier in your school career, just to, if nothing else, get out of your comfort zone, make some connections, do a little bit of career research, see what jobs are out there. But now you're kind of moved beyond that point, Brian. Now you're moving to your next phase where now you're starting to look for an internship. So this might be, you got a lot on the line here at this CPEC Job Fair.
Yeah.
Can you share with students out there that might be going to a job fair for their first time how you're going to go about preparing for this?
Well, preparing different resumes, your cover letter is a big part, learning about that in now job pursuit seminar class. So I just found out today from Steve that your references page is on a separate piece of paper. I always thought you insert it right at the bottom of the resume. So getting in touch with Steve, Tristan, and Audrey, it's a big part. You want to be active, and with other students too. Ask them if they need help. Just try to be a lending hand.
Well, I did want to point out something, Brian. You'd mentioned about references. The one thing that I can't stress enough is if you're putting someone down as a reference, let them know.
Yes, let them know.
Because it's very important for us to know. I just had a student the other day that contacted me and said, I'm going to be using you as a reference, and that's great. Because then if I get a message from somebody who might be looking
you're not thrown off guard.
Exactly. And I'll tell you, a lot of these companies nowadays, they want to hear from the references before they're moving on. And if your references don't get back to them quick enough, unfortunately, they might move elsewhere. So the references that you put down are really, really important in terms of maybe getting that job.
And, you two can definitely, you probably will agree with me on this, but whatever job you're applying to, you want to have somebody, like your references be someone who is related to that field, I'm sure.
Well, so just some more things that I want to talk about. Brian, though, you never answered my question fully.
Okay.
What are some of the tips that you would give? So you talked about putting your resume together. Yeah. What about the day of? Well, give our listeners.
So I thought you meant just like in general. Day of, I would say walk in, see what your different companies are, because they usually offer you a map as well. So you want to make a list of the places you want to go to first. Which one strikes your interest a lot? I remember last year, one of the ones I really had an interest in was Foot Locker. They had one, so we went there first. We visited Rite Aid, and it's actually crazy that this is already a year, because I remember it feels like it was yesterday. Yep. Rite Aid was really active. CVS, I believe, was there. So we were mingling with different companies and just getting our feet wet and introducing ourselves.
And certainly, even something as simple as picking out your attire for the day is really important as well.
I think that's the easiest part, not going to lie.
well,
for some students, it's not. Let's be honest.
And that's true. And something else is that students that are maybe early on in their college may not have the professional clothing.
And you can go to Steve for that.
And that's where I wanted to bring Steve in here. Steve, if anyone out there is maybe they don't necessarily have the type of clothing that you would suggest, number one, what type of dress do you suggest for a job fair like this?
Well, typically for the male students, certainly a nice pair of dress pants, a nice dress shirt, and a tie. Is pretty much standard. For ladies, maybe, a nice pantsuit or, a nice dress if they prefer or whatever. But you want to dress professionally like you were going to go to a job interview. Yeah. So think about the field that you want to work in particular. What do people typically dress like in that field? And then maybe even trying to dress, one notch above that. So as Brian mentioned, we can help you if you're not prepared with that professional clothing. We have a good selection of professional clothing that some of it is brand new, some of it is like new if it's not, and we actually give that away. There's no cost. You can take it. You don't bring it back after the job fair. You can keep it. It's yours to keep. And if we don't have the right size for you, we also have some gift cards to Community Aid where they can go and they can use that gift card just specifically for nice clothing as well.
This to me does not sound like something that's common in terms of the clothing and as far as even going as far as giving gift cards to Community Aid. Is this something that in the career services industry that is maybe blossoming at this point, developing, professional dress?
Yeah, it's interesting because it certainly wasn't common at all 5 years ago. And just in the last 6 months, I think I've seen 3 other schools, 2 of which are part of CPEC, that have talked about their career closet or
You're an innovator, Steve.
Well, we always try to be out there on the cutting edge. We love it when other people are trying to do what we're doing.
In all honesty, one of the interesting things about this is, Steve, is because we are a smaller, certainly, residential campus, it's probably a little easier for us to do that than maybe a larger school. But at the same time, this wasn't that easy for you. You had to develop community partners. You work with a wide variety of people, whether it's alumni or certain community groups, to get this clothing. I mean, even though we're a smaller school, it's still not easy. Can you just tell us where you came up with this idea and how you go about getting the clothing?
Yeah, the idea came about a few years ago. I think about 3 years ago was the first time that we did it. And we reached out to some community partners as well as our faculty and staff here. And we said we would like to have a professional clothing giveaway day. So it kind of started with one day. We're going to do one day and we're going to be able to give away clothing. And Central Penn, used to have a professional appearance policy that was in effect each and every day. So students had to dress professionally to go to class every day. When we got rid of that, we just determined that professional appearance is still obviously very important. And we need to make sure that our students are prepared when they're going to a job fair, when they're meeting with employers, when they're going out for an internship or to start their job. So we wanted to help them with that because we know that the cost of buying that professional clothing can be pretty expensive.
I got to tell you, Steve, one of the things that I learned pretty quickly is if you go out and buy, because I have to dress professionally every day, as do you.
Right.
And if you go out and just have to plop down all this money when you get a job for professional attire, it can be extremely expensive. So one of the interesting things, too, I think about this is it's not only just necessarily for job fairs. It's also for job interviews. Or if, say, you get that first job and you need a nice attire or at least have 1 or 2 sets of clothing, that also is helpful. So not only are we helping you prepare for job fairs and networking events, job interviews, but also if you get that job, you're there to help them to at least have an outfit or 2 that they can use at their job.
Absolutely, yeah. One of the members of our alumni council who graduated from Central Penn back in the 1970s had a long career in state government. And he came to the last alumni council meeting and he said, hey, I have a lot of professional clothing that I'd like to be able to pass along to students, So not only did he bring professional clothing in, but now he sent me an email the other day and he says, hey, I've been talking to some of my friends who would also like to contribute. So the word spreads and we've got a good selection up there.
Now, I did want to point out, anybody who does not have transportation from campus, you do offer transportation that day. Can you just let our listeners know who might be interested in using that transportation, how they might go about arranging that?
Absolutely. So we've reserved the Central Penn van to take people back and forth. We're not going to run it continuously. Obviously, what we're going to do is we're going to find out from the people who need transportation what their schedules are like and when they would like to go and come back to campus. So all you have to do is contact us in Career Services. You can stop by in room 53 of Bollinger Hall, or again, you can email us, careerservices@centralpenn.edu. Let us know that you'd like to go and you'd like transportation from campus, and just give us an idea of when you're available to leave campus and when you'd like to come back. And then we'll put together a schedule based on those people who need transportation.
Awesome. Okay, as we move into our final segment on the show today, what we are going to do is we're going to play a little scenario. We're waking up. It's Tuesday, February the 19th. It's about 8:30, about an hour and a half to CPEC. I want to know some tips from not only then, but when you arrive. I'm going to go around the table and we'll keep going until we maybe run out of tips. Brian, I'm going to start with you. You're getting ready to walk into CPEC. Give a tip to a student listening right now on how to approach the job fair.
Grab the map of what companies are going to be there.
And so that's definitely the first thing you want to do. Certainly, if anyone's from Central Penn, check in with us.
Yeah.
Check in with Steve. Check in with Kristen. I'm sure Audrey is also going to be there. I will be there. Let us help you. Let us chat with you before, because my tip, Steve, is going to be develop a strategy. Identify a handful of companies. What I've seen students do in the past that I don't believe works is they're like, you know what? I want to go to these 20 places. I think, to me, that's a little too much. And maybe I'll ask for your advice on that. But I always advise students do 5 at a time. They identify the top 5 that they wanted to go to, and then they take 10, 15 minutes through the whole process. Maybe 5 minutes researching the company, 5 minutes at the table, and then 5 minutes following up and maybe finding some more information. And then depending on time, take another 5 and then take another 5. What do you think?
I like that strategy, and we actually have a room reserved that we call the student resource room. So sometimes when you're in there and you're working the room, so to speak, and you've gone to 4 or 5 places, you want to kind of collect your thoughts. You want to write down some notes. You want to kind of think about where do I want to go next, et cetera. So if you want, you can come out of the room. You can go to the resource room. You can sit down. It'll be kind of a quiet place. There'll be a couple computers, laptops there, if you want to do some more research about the companies on there. And you can kind of gather your thoughts and then plan, where you want to go again. And go back into the room. You can come and go as many times as you want throughout the day.
I will say to that point, Steve, something that I had done is I had urged students to bring their laptops and go into the resource room and immediately follow up with LinkedIn requests, personalized, of course, to some of the people who they were meeting, that they found. And that also allows them to do some research on the companies as well before they go up. Steve, I'm going to ask you for one tip that you're going to be able to use if you're attending CPEC.
So we have a new tool available to you this year, and I'm very excited about it. And it's an app, a free download, and it should be ready next week. I think it's already ready for Android devices, but they're working out the final bugs for Apple devices. So it'll be a free download. I think it'll be Cpac Job Fair will be the name of the app. And right there on your phone, you can have information on all the companies that are there. They'll have the map that Brian referred to right there on your phone. You'll have tips and advice. So my tip would be to download that app in advance of the job fair. It will also stay active after the job fair, so you can continue to refer back to it and the weeks following the job fair as you research those companies and make those connections.
We have time for one more time around the table. So Brian, we've already mentioned a couple tips. Give us one final tip for CPEC for students out there listening.
Well, mine's going to be actually a little before. I would honestly recommend getting a good night's rest and a good breakfast in before going. Trying to make the best appearance that you can have in yourself. So
awesome. Well, one tip I'm going to say is always make sure that you have something in your hand to give to the people at the tables. Steve, you've gone as far as to suggest students making up business cards, which I think is certainly useful. But at a minimum, you should have your resume along with you that you can hand to the people at that table. So a firm handshake and something to hand to them, whether that's a business card or whether that's a resume, is an absolute necessity. So Steve, the last one final tip. We're Tuesday, February 19th. It's 10 o'clock. We're about to walk into CPEC. Give me one final tip.
Don't walk up to the employer at the table and say, "What are you all about?" Okay.
Oh,
do some of your
happens.
research. Yeah, it does happen. And it drives employers crazy. So I've done at least a little bit of research ahead of time. You can say, "Hey, I see that you're a multimedia company. You have these types of positions. This is what I could bring to your company. Let's talk a little bit more about your company and if we might be a good fit."
With the day and age of the internet, and that's part of the reason that I suggested earlier to attack 5, because you can sit in the resource room, you can take notes on those 5 companies, and then as you go to each one, you've got some information right there in front of you. You're able to talk to them intelligently about that. And Steve, to your point, you do not want to go up to them and ask them what they're all about in the day and the age of the internet. So there's a couple things that I just wanted to promote. Certainly, you can always go to centralpenn.edu/career services. Steve also mentioned that they do have a tab in Blackboard community as well, so you can always find any of that information. But Steve, it's not just about job fairs. You also do networking events. You have job and internship fairs both on campus, and we are affiliated with CPEC off campus. You do mock interviews. You are part of the job pursuit seminar class. So our students, I get you into my classrooms as much as I possibly can. So Steve, Kristen, and Audrey, they need to be your best friends while you're here because they can certainly help you prepare for that next step in finding a career. So Steve, it's always a pleasure to have you, and I just want to thank you very much for everything you do for our students.
It's always a pleasure to be here. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate the support of the Nightly News Media Club.
Certainly not a problem. Brian, as always, I wish you luck at CPEC, and hopefully maybe you find something, although where are you at right now? And you've got like 5 different jobs.
Yeah, I have one place of interest, so
Cool.
we're getting there.
That's awesome. Well, again, one final note. CPEC Job Fair, Tuesday, February 19th. That is from 10 to 3. You do not have to stay the entire time. Most students spend anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half there. You're welcome to stay as long as you like. It is free. Registration not required, but you can email career services at centralpenn.edu if you need a ride or if you just want to let them know that you're coming. I'm really looking forward to being there. It's something I look forward to every year, and let's just keep our fingers crossed on the weather.
Absolutely.
So, all right, everybody. This is going to be it for this segment of the Nightly News Podcast. So I'd like to thank Nightly News President Brian Christiana and Career Services Director Steve Hassinger for joining us on the podcast today. Stay tuned. We're going to be meeting with the Dean of the Nursing and Health Sciences Department, Dr. Krista Wolf, after the break. But this is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll see you on the other side.
Hi, this is Adrienne from the Student Activities Office. Thank you for listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and we're coming to you today from the Nasir Harris Podcast Studio from the Boyer House of the Summerdale campus of Central Penn College. We are so fortunate today to be joined by Dr. Krista Wolf. She is the Dean of the Nursing and Health Sciences Department here at Central Penn College. Dr. Wolf, it is such a pleasure to have you. This is your debut appearance on the Nightly News Podcast, and from what you were telling me, your debut appearance on any podcast.
I am very excited to be here today. And yes, this is my first ever podcast, and I'm really looking forward to it.
We're also joined by Austin Steiner. Austin, it's such a pleasure to have you, one of our new Nightly News reporters. So welcome.
Thank you, Paul.
Austin joined the club a term or 2 terms ago, and actually just in his very first piece did an excellent article that we released during finals week about nutrition. He went down and he interviewed one of our community partners down at Wise and interviewed one of their nutritionists down there and did an excellent piece. Actually got on the back cover of our quarterly publication, so something that he's kind of going to bring a new angle for the Nightly News for us. So Austin, we really appreciate what you're doing and know you're working really hard.
Thank you.
Well, I want to start off at the beginning, Dr. Wolf. One of the things, so you've been here nearly as long as I have. I started in 2013. When did you start?
I started in 2004.
Oh, wow. So you've been here way longer than me. But one of the things that we probably knew each other for, I don't know, probably a year or two before somehow in conversation it came up that we are both graduates of Slippery Rock University. So we've always kind of had that bond. Let's talk about Slippery Rock. I know that this is a Central Penn themed podcast, but what is one of your most fond memories of going there?
I think one of the most fond memories was definitely the camaraderie I had with all of my fellow PT students, because you might find us at 3 o'clock in the morning down in one of the empty classrooms studying when there's nobody else on campus. So those memories are the ones that I cherish, and probably the football games, because we have some pretty good football.
I was very lucky. Some of my most fond memories were when, obviously, I spent 4 years at the radio station there, WRSK, and I also was able, when I was a senior, to call Slippery Rock baseball games, which, ironically enough, has served me well now that I'm the play-by-play guy for our Central Penn Knights baseball team. I never thought I'd be able to call baseball games again. So, see, even little things you do in college come back. But I miss those times. I'll tell you one thing I don't miss. Every morning, from January to March, every morning, I'm not even just making this up, every morning you had to clean your car off. There was at least an inch of snow every single day. That's one thing I do not miss, but I love my time in Western PA.
Well, on a day like this, with these sub-zero temperatures, I will say one of my fondest memories is sitting at Wise and Flew Dining Hall, watching the ramp and seeing how many people fell as they were attempting to cross campus and slide across the Arctic.
But what was interesting about there, Krista, we never had off.
No.
Never. And we now understood, we were about, at that time, maybe 90% residential. There's only about 10% commuters. So almost everybody was a residential student. But we never had off unless there was like a foot of snow. But they did close 2 days. They're actually closed Wednesday and Thursday. We are recording this when we are in the middle of the polar vortex. So that's kind of why we're bringing that up. But I do want to, before we move on to some of the things that we're going to talk about today, including your new certificate program, some of your applied associate's degrees, and even some of the things that you're working on. One thing I did want to ask you before we move on. I noticed that, and Austin, maybe you can chat about this as well. You talked about the camaraderie that you had with your the people that were in your program at Slippery Rock. One thing that you can't help but notice around Central Penn's campus is that the camaraderie of the different cohorts that you have. What do you think that does for a student's success level to be able to work in a cohort model and basically be able to befriend and really network with some of the people that are in their class?
I think it's phenomenal. You have people that will travel with you from class to class each term that you're here, and you get a sense of accomplishment, and you look out for one another. If somebody's late for class, they definitely send them a message like, are you okay? This isn't normal. Who wants to get together and study? And you're kind of all in the same boat. So you're studying the same things. You have the same stress levels. You can remind each other of deadlines. I tell you what, this 18 months, it goes really fast, and I think Austin can probably attest to that.
Austin, what are your thoughts about, are there any, friends that you've made, people that you associate with every single day that kind of are there to morally support you and actually support you like when there's big tests coming?
Absolutely. It's more of like a team atmosphere. I can speak for my cohort. There's 13 in my core classes, and I share every single class with them, and we're there through thick and thin, through everything that's going on, through the classes. If somebody's sick or something's going on, we're always checking on them. We have our own group chat. We're always there for each other. We know when it's going to get tough and send each other texts and always communicating.
What I always try to talk about, because I do teach a lot of freshman seminar, which is our first year studies class, is the importance of, and for lack of a better term, I call it the buddy system. Whether it's one person, whether it's a group of people, things come up. We're on an accelerated schedule. We've, especially around the holidays, it seemed like things were coming up, whether it's people are sick, relatives are not doing well. What does that really mean to you to know that if something were to come up, that you've got somebody there that's got your back that can help you and get through that next exam, even if you do have life get in the way?
Yeah, I always have somebody to ask for the notes for that day of class. If there's anything going on, it's always a text message away, and there's more than one person that's going to help you, and that's including the professors. They're always asking. They know what's going on with the students just as well. Like they're in the group with us. So if they notice something's going on or some of us aren't feeling well, they're asking us as well because they're kind of our family as well.
I love to hear that. And again, in the health sciences, there's no doubt that this cohort model, I think, has really not only just worked for the students in the classroom, but it's really worked beyond the classroom, because when that 18 months is up, you've made friends, you still have connections. And I've actually heard from some alumni that those connections that they made in the cohorts help move on to jobs. Can you give or share some type of success story? You don't have to mention any specific names, but maybe an example of something you've heard along those lines?
There's so many that I couldn't even start, but I do have one, and I don't think that they'll mind that I share their names. So I still treat sometimes in the evenings and on weekends, and I'm at Inspired PT, which is in Mechanicsburg, and I have two lovely individuals that are alumni from the program, and they're PTAs together in the clinic, and it's Heather and Shelby, and it's so exciting to work with them, and there's someone interning there right now, so I get to see them when I come in, so it's really exciting. And you look on Facebook, and these people, they become your forever friends. You end up spending more time with them than you do your families during this time period, because you're all in the same boat and you have to get the studying in. I mean, it's definitely one of the hardest experiences that I've had in my life, and I give these students props because I went 7 years to study this, and I'm expecting them to learn it in 18 months. So it's kind of crazy.
Well, we do have big news here, and I mean, it's not necessarily breaking news that we're talking about right now, but one of the biggest things that you've been working on, probably over the last year or two, is the new phlebotomy certificate that you began offering in the winter term. So number one, to our maybe non-scientific listeners out there, can you explain what phlebotomy is? And I've had a lot of people say, oh yeah, that's brain surgery, right? I don't think so. Can you just explain what phlebotomy is for someone who might be interested?
Sure, Paul, I'd be happy to. So the phlebotomy program is actually a subset of our medical assisting program. It is the first certificate that we got approved here at Central Penn. And Professor Nikki Marhefka, I have to give her credit, as well as Sean Humphrey, who has helped to gather this program together. The classes consist of 18 credits. And what a phlebotomist would do is mainly blood draws. So they can work in a clinic, outpatient setting, in a hospital. We were actually approached by the local hospitals because there's a need in this area for a phlebotomist, So all over, and they wondered if we would be willing to run this program. We examined our curriculum, and Professor Merhefka and I sat down and put it together, and we realized that we had all the core classes that we needed that would allow students to take this phlebotomy certificate through the NHLA. And so we just started running the cohort this winter, and I think we have about 14 students in it.
That's unbelievable. And I got to tell you, this is one of the things that I really love about working in higher education is it's up to us to try to determine where the need for our students is, because we don't just want to send them out there with an education. We want to send them out there with skills that allow them to get a job. I mean, that's really what we're here for. And to know that you have people in the community coming and seeking you out to explain to you where the needs are, because while you still practice, there's things that we just don't see on it. Even though we try to keep up with the trends and everything, especially in our local area, we might not even be knowledgeable that there's opportunity. What was it about phlebotomy? Was it just because there was that huge need and you can sort of let students know, look, if you make it through this program, you're going to have a job waiting for you?
That's exactly it, Paul. There is a need, and it's almost a 2-for-1 deal. So you can come and you have two choices you can make. You can just get your phlebotomy certificate. We can help with financial aid with that. Or you can get your phlebotomy certificate by staying 2 more terms and have your medical assisting degree. So, and then if students want to keep going, they can go on to get their bachelor's in health science degree. And if they want to go further, they can go to grad school.
I love it. One of the things that we're trying to do in our department is kind of do the same type of ladder programming, something that our president, Dr. Linda Fidrizi-Williams, has really talked about since she's taken over the head position here, is trying to build ladder programming. And the thought process there is we want to get our students out into the workforce earlier so they can develop and get some more experience. So, for example, if they were to come in and take phlebotomy, they could go immediately into the field, maybe stay another couple terms, and then maybe use that experience to continue moving up the ladder. And I think that it's such a wonderful idea.
And one of the bonuses of doing that is that oftentimes their employers will pay for the students to go back to get another degree. So that is something we're seeing a lot of the hospitals around here are willing to do that for their students.
Find good people. You want to keep them around. That's one way to do so, especially with, we're all aware of student loan debt, and everybody sitting in this room is aware of all of those things. So, well, you do have 3 applied associate's degrees. So can you just explain to maybe somebody out there who doesn't understand, what is an applied associate's degree?
An applied associate's degree is very similar to a regular associate's degree. It just has more of a clinical and laboratory based. So we follow accreditation standards. So we have a physical therapy assistant, occupational therapy assistant, and medical assisting applied associates here. All 3 have separate accreditations that we have to abide by. So we're looking at more laboratory hands-on work than more of the in-lecture style classes.
One thing I did want to point out for listeners, Central Penn College is accredited by Middle States, but what Dr. Wolf is explaining is you are actually accredited by outside organizations beyond Middle States. So your programs are actually accredited twice.
Yes.
So that's something that's very important to understand. I did want to ask Austin a question because we found something out about Austin that I didn't know. This is actually Austin's second career, if you will. He has a background in political science and criminal justice.
Correct.
So, Austin, how did you go from that kind of background? Now you're here as a PTA student.
Sure. So I actually got my undergrad degree from Kutztown University. So I'm also a fellow Cpac.
I was going to say, we played you in football.
Well, and I actually got my master's degree from Shippensburg, and I've just been accepted into the IUP doctorate program. So I'm going to have the Triple Crown.
Wow. Anyway, so I got started back in here. So I pursued a career in corporate security and law enforcement after graduating from Kutztown University. Was unfortunately injured in a motor vehicle accident in one of my jobs. So shortly after that, followed a ton of physical therapy visits as well as some physicians. And honestly, it was the physical therapists who were able to rehabilitate me without any invasive surgery. And it's been lots of time and practice in the clinic, regaining my strength and getting back to normal. It's been a long process, but it really opened my eyes to different careers in this field, and that's ultimately how I ended up here.
I think that's amazing. One of the things that I have a tendency of hearing a lot about working with students, because I do get to reach, in some of my Comm 101 classes, I do get to reach everyone here on campus. And one of the overarching themes of any of our health sciences students is that they want to get into this industry to help people. That is their sole mission in life, and I think that that's so noble. But often, it's difficult when you're going through all the rigors of the class. But when you help that first person and you see what your work is actually doing, it really is life changing. We talk all the time about how important it is really to just love what you do, and this is just another example of the passion that students can have when they know that they're actually giving back to the community. Dr. Wolf, what are your thoughts with some of the students that you've worked with? Is that something that you hear a lot as well?
Oh, most definitely. And in looking at a broader sense, even just of all of Central Penn, we have some wonderful professors here, and everyone has history and they have experience in their field. And I think that's one of the best things about Central Penn is we are goal-oriented to have people be employable in their fields of interest. Granted, your first couple terms here, you're getting your foundations, your base work that everybody needs to have to be a well-rounded individual. But then you get into your core classes and you are learning what you're passionate about. And everyone knows if you're passionate about something, you're going to work harder at it. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think in the health sciences, the nice thing is we are so hands-on that you're in the lab early on and you're figuring out, yes, this is something I want to do, or no, this is definitely not up my alley. I had a student, she's like, I don't like feet. And I was like, okay. And she's like, I don't ever want to touch feet. And I'm like, I can't guarantee that you're not going to touch feet. So, you get up close and personal with your fellow classmates, with your professors, but you do get a bonding sensation. And the first time you treat a patient and you see them get better, it's amazing.
It's got to be a wonderful feeling. So we do have 3 applied associate's degree. PTA enrolls cohorts in winter and summer. Our OTA program, our occupational therapy assistant program, enrolls in spring and fall. And our MA program is rolling admissions, which simply means that we accept applications year-round. You also have 2 active bachelor's degree programs, which is a BSHM, if you could explain what that is.
Mm-hmm. That is a Bachelor's of Science in Healthcare Management.
What would a typical job be in that field?
That is more looking for managerial. So that is a degree completion program. So if you are a medical assistant, say, and you want to go up the ladder at work and you want to apply for that manager position, this would be a great aspect. We're working really well with the business department on campus and looking at maybe adding some certificates in this realm as well. But it gives you that administrative business background with a specialization in healthcare.
Are a lot of the local clinics that our students go to, are they more regional, or are there some small businesses in terms of the types of jobs that our students are getting into?
We have a mix of both.
And so would you say that it's safe to say that some of the small businesses, maybe they could use a more business background?
Most definitely. We were approached by another hospital a couple of years ago when we started this program because we have so many urgent care centers and places like that around here where they would like to be able to employ a medical assistant that has managerial experience so that they could run the clinic but also work when the census might be down or something along that nature. So you can have a phlebotomist who is an MA who also has their healthcare management degree, and they might be the sole manager of an urgent care clinic, like here in the Harrisburg area.
We also have a bachelor degree in the BSHS, and that's something that you've really been trying to get out in the community and talk more about. So can you explain a little bit what that might mean?
Yeah, I certainly can. So the BSHS is our Bachelor's of Health Science degree, which is my undergraduate degree. And this is a preparatory degree, so it's a little bit different. When you graduate with this degree, you're not going to go out and get a job right away. You have this degree with an intent to carry on. So our program is designed for physical therapy assistant, medical assisting, occupational therapy assistant, and medical assistant, sorry. But it's designed for students that are looking to go on to graduate programs. So we researched it and built the curriculum so it meets about 95% of entrance into graduate programs. So for physician's assistant, a doctorate in physical therapy, a doctorate in occupational therapy, or some other medical programs, and that's nationwide.
And we have 14 illustrious faculty that work in our department. This is what I found really, really cool. 6 of them have doctorates. but 5 of them are alumni of our programs. Why do you believe that it's important to have Central Penn alumni in the classroom with our current Central Penn students?
I think empathy, and that's, something that we teach for our patients, or that we have for our patients, but they understand the program, they understand the rigor, they understand what it's like to be in the classroom, and the exciting thing is, they applied for the position, so they had such a great experience here in our programs that they wanted to come back and pay it forward to other students.
I think that that's an unbelievable part of your department, is that you've got so many that have gone through Central Penn. Austin, I did want to ask you, for a student who might be maybe looking for a career change, or even a student that might just be looking to do this because it's something that they want to do to help people, can you maybe give any advice for how to deal with the accelerated schedule, especially with how difficult we know some of these entry-level classes are?
Yeah, it's definitely much different from a traditional undergrad program. So you're going to go through 11-week semesters here with a 2-week break in between. So the program is going to go pretty darn quickly, whether you're going to be on the boat or not. So, but you have a great faculty, staff, students, everybody surrounding you that's going to help you out if you're willing to put in the work into the time. As far as transitioning, it's great because this is an 18-month investment for somebody who's even coming out of high school without any prior degrees or anything, and even less for somebody like me who already has an undergrad. I'm looking at a year of classes and then some clinical work, which is going to be about 14 weeks or so, and I can sit for my boards. So a complete 180 change in career path in a very little bit of time, and it's very manageable to do.
Well, I really appreciate your insight there, and hopefully some students can take some of your advice, not only with working with some of your people in your cohort, but even just, nose to the grindstone for 18 months. And then, as Dr. Wolf, as you said off the air, you're walking into about a $40,000 job after just 18 months. I mean, if you come right from high school, you could be 20 years old making that kind of salary, and I think that that's extremely appealing. I did want to talk about a couple of things. We are releasing this podcast on the 5th of February, and I did want to point out on Wednesday, February 6th, in the Partnership for Career Development, we'll host a student event entitled The Business of Wellness at the Capital Area Intermedia Unit just down the street from Summerdale campus. The purpose of this event is to allow educators from our East Shore, West Shore, and Perry County school districts to encourage and assist students in broadening their appreciation for a myriad of career opportunities available to them in the health and wellness industry. So I did want to put that out there. There's also some other things that the department has going on. There is a date night at the Brookdale Grandin Farms in Mechanicsburg. It's you can always check that out on online for the address, but they are hosting a date night at 5 o'clock on Valentine's Day, and the CPC, MA, OTA, and PTA students are attending the events with the residents as dates. I think that's really cool. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. Paul Bruno reached out to us, and they were looking for dates for the residents. So it's going to be a one-on-one date. So they will come with a flower or a corsage or something of that nature that we're working on. They will get the resident from the room. They will go and have dinner and spend some time with them and enjoy a really nice Valentine's Day.
I love that. And that's one of the things I always talk about. One of the reasons, Dr. Wolf, that I've chosen to spend my career here at Central Penn is because I really agree with the mission and what we're trying to do, getting out in the community, doing that community service in one way or the other. And this is a perfect example of that. So I really appreciate that. You're doing the self-study right now for the OTA reaccreditation process that's coming up here in 2019. And you are also looking for the PTA program to be reaccredited in 2020.
Yeah, pretty exciting. My faculty are working pretty hard. I give them some, kudos because they're teaching their classes, they're writing their self-studies, they're getting organized. So I have some pretty amazing people I get to work with every day.
I did want to end the podcast with a sort of a wish for good luck and hopefully a congratulations at some point. But you currently work with the Federation of State Boards of Physical Therapy, and you are writing the National licensure examination for PTA students. How did that happen?
Right? How did that happen? I was approached by a member of the Federation to see if I wanted to start writing items for the exam. And that was after attending a couple workshops on how to write excellent test questions that were in line with the licensure exam. They asked me to do it about 6 years ago. I was lucky enough to have 2 consecutive sessions because we signed a 3-year contract to help. So after writing questions, I was then asked to join the exam review board. And I served as a member of that for 4 years. And last year I became chair of that committee. I'm a co-chair. I've met some wonderful therapists from all over the United States. And we traveled to Alexandria, Virginia 4 times a year. And we look at test questions for validity. We make sure that it's up to date, that they're fair questions, that they're practical. We organize the exam and get it ready to go for our students to take and pass and then to be practicing therapists.
And last but not least, you are also applying to be a member of the state board for Pennsylvania for physical therapy. And apparently you just got a letter of recommendation from Senator Mike Regan last week.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. So I'm hoping it comes to fruition. And if it doesn't this year, I'll try again next year. But just waiting to see if Governor Wolf thinks that I might be a viable candidate to help promote my profession and give back a little bit.
Do you believe that that you have the same last name might help?
I know. I wish. I really wish there was some sort of relation there, but I have an E and he doesn't at the end. But
well, certainly we wish you the best of luck. Do you ever send any of this stuff into the Slippery Rock class notes? Because I don't ever see in the Rock magazine.
No, but I should do that.
I did that one time, and it was really cool because then I keep it and then I can read through it. So
yeah.
Listen, Dr. Wolf, you are just up to so much. You're not only developing certificates, you're not only revamping your programs, you're not only doing self-studies, but you're working at a statewide level and at a national level, practicing, physical therapy and everything and you're also help molding the future as well. So we want to thank you so much for doing that and certainly for taking your time out today to join the Nightly News podcast.
Thanks, Paul. This has been amazing.
Of course. And Austin Steiner, we have to thank you so much. We've been trying forever to get somebody that's in health sciences to come and give health sciences a voice for the Nightly News. You've done that. You've stepped up to the plate very soon. You've got some articles that are going to be coming out this term. So, you're welcome down here on the podcast anytime. It was such a pleasure to have you down.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity.
Not a problem at all. Well, that's it for another episode of the Nightly News podcast. So I want to thank Nightly News reporter Austin Steiner and, of course, the Dean of the Nursing and Health Sciences Department, Dr. Krista Wolf, for coming on the show today. All right, this is it for this is Professor Paul Miller, and we will catch you next time on the Nightly News podcast.